Hello and welcome. I am Kay. I'm from the Nathalia Historical Society, and today I'm showing the cold process of making soap. It will make sense when you look at all the other videos. So I've already measured out my oils, which is coconut oil and olive oil, and now I'm very carefully going to measure out my lye. So lye, or well, it's not lye until you add water to it, to be more precise. At the moment it is caustic soda. Perfect. Okay, so put that lid back on and put it away nice and safely. I'm going to pause the video so I can grab the distilled water rather than the water out of the tap. Okay, I've got my distilled water, and the reason you use distilled water over tap water is because if you have hard water, so out of the bore, it will react with the process and can sometimes either completely wreck your soap or make it a bit grimy or soft, or you know, a lot of weird things, to tell you the truth. As well as if you're using town water, I've lost my lid. There it is. If you're using town water, it can contain other chemicals, you know, to make it safer and better for drinking, like fluoride and that sort of thing, and that can react too. So if you can just see, it's quite currently it's white rather than completely clear, and that's because it's doing the mixture, and it's also quite warm to the touch. So I put it in the jar and put the lid on it to make it safe, basically. That's all it is. If something random happens, I know that no one is going to get hurt by that. So now I can grab my thermometer that I had. There we go. It's about the right temperature, and now we're going to, as you can see, some of the cutlery has already started to go, and the glass is very hot, so be careful. And it hasn't quite dissolved all of the lye just yet, and it is currently way too hot. So we'll put the lid back on and give it a bit more of a stir. Cold process is the only process where you can easily use molds because it's pourable, whereas if you use the hot process, which I'll demonstrate at a later point, it becomes more like a wet dough. It's probably the easiest way of explaining it. And so putting it into molds that have fancy, intricate patterns don't always come out the best, that sort of thing. It's not to say you can't, it's just to be aware that it's not pourable in the hot process, where it is pourable in the cold process. Now, the reason these two vary is the hot process applies an additional heat to cook the lye solution out, so it is no longer caustic or, you know, harmful. Whereas the cold process prefers to do that in the curing part of the process, which means that once you've made the cold processed soap and it's come out of the molds the next day, you still need to wear gloves. It's vital that you still wear gloves the next day, and even when you turn them over in whatever rack you use, to still have gloves on at that 2-week mark. Okay, it has been, about 10-15 minutes maybe while I've waited for it to get to the right temperature, and it is. So now I'm going to very carefully pour in so there's no splashing. My lye solution, I'm going to just put the lid back on so I can clean it up after. And now I'm just going to gently run it around with the spoon so it all mixes through. Now, if you don't have a, was it an electric stick blender? I don't know, I think of them as buzzers, so I can't say that I really know what you should be calling them. Anyway, if you don't have one of those, you can do this next step by whisk. However, it is far less painful if you just do this. So if the temperatures are too hot, it will get to the trace stage too quickly and not necessarily combined properly. This is not the trace stage. You'll see when we get to it. It's also to note that during this process and when you first add the water to the caustic soda, not to breathe in the fumes. There are fumes, they can be annoying, don't breathe them in. Okay, we're almost there. If you've noted, and I don't know how well you can see it on the camera, it has slightly changed colour. It's a bit more of a creamy colour than just a white colour like it was at the start. Okay, so we're there. So, trying to think of the culinary term, and I can't. Basically, it's very much like cream you've just poured out of the pot. And this is called the trace stage, because if you grabbed a spoon and ran it through, there would be a clear line left behind. Alright, give that a quick clean off. Now, if you were to add smells, like oils or colour, don't use food colour, you will regret it. Then this is the time you would do it before you just start putting it into your moulds. So I just wanted to do a couple of little blocking moulds before I do some pretty ones. Now I've decided not to scent this one today because I wanted to give a clear difference between this process and the hot process, which is the same ingredients done differently, essentially. The method is different. So, good. Just lightly scrape it into the next bear. These minis are for Mother's Day for you guys to take home. So this particular recipe that I went with, being half and half coconut oil and olive oil, is because it gives a good blend between a hard block and not being too frothy when you use it. So there's still, and not too strong in its cleaning. Whereas if I was making a block for household cleaning jobs, which I have done in the past, 100% coconut is just an excellent choice. It makes oil disappear. It's fantastic. I highly recommend. Even for like pure laundry, because that's what you've got to remember. Soap once was for all cleaning jobs because detergent wasn't really around, and what of it was around would have been not that great and rather expensive. whereas soap was something that women made at home or brought, depending on how wealthy they were and exactly what time period we're talking about. And it did just about anything. And you can still buy pure soap out of the aisle where you find your clothes washing detergent. That is fantastic for washing clothes, and it's something I actually still use because I prefer it over powder or liquid for washing clothes. As it cools, it gets thicker, which leads to cool designs if you're into that sort of thing. But you still got to leave it overnight before it's solid. So you need to glad wrap it, which is always a fun task with gloves on. You can either glad wrap or baking paper, whatever is either on hand or easiest. And put somewhere that is nowhere near children, is nowhere near pets, is nowhere near anything that could disrupt it or contaminate it. So the glad wrap is sort of more of a safety. So one, it doesn't end up contaminated and icky, but two, so no one else comes into contact with it. Because you've got to remember, it's still caustic. It's still dangerous. Even though it's far less dangerous than what it was before you added the fats, or added it to the fats, I should say, it is still not particularly safe. And we will come back tomorrow for the reveal. Okay, this is the next day. I've just been keeping them in a box. Now all I have to do is carefully pop them out. Like so. And then basically set them up in the box to dry so they're not touching. And if they're still a little bit soft, like this one is still way too soft, you can leave it for a couple more days and then do it. But for some reason it's only 1 or 2. So once you've got them out, clean them up. I'll try and demonstrate that again. Yeah, you can just clean them up. Okay, so I've given them all a bit of a trim, and I'm also, because they're all a little bit firmer today, including these little ones, and I'm doing a bad job of actually staying on film. Just cleaning up that edge because it's annoying me. I am also, can you see that? I don't know if that's coming up on your screens. I've just stamped the letter C, and I'm going to stamp all of these little ones with the letter C, and I'm going to try and write cold in these slightly bigger ones. So if you're there at the show right now, you can look through the blocks of soap and go, oh, that's that one. Here's hoping anyway. Okay, I don't know if you can see that, but I have stamped cold on it, and I'm only using the old rubber wooden backed stamps. I've got a whole alphabet set, so that tends to be what I use for this sort of thing. There's one other thing I wanted to quickly mention. The other day when I had a couple of squishy ones, I went off and played with them and added different forms of dye. So that black, for example, is charcoal that I've mixed into a small batch. I think that one there is stinging nettle. No, actually I'm wrong. That one's stinging nettle. I'm not sure about those other couple of dark ones. I'd have to double check. And then these are those Indian
colours that you can, Indian powder that you can buy out of those sorts of shops. So it's more just for a bit of fun, bit of an experiment, but I thought I'd just show you.